Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's Movie Reviews, coming at you online and in print format at nicktiffany.com, in audio format wherever you get your podcasts, and even in video on YouTube. Today we are talking about another Hulu release, and fortunately another good one. You could watch it on Hulu, or you could go to Disney and you could watch it on Disney Plus. You know, the snake keeps eating its tail because you can watch everything on Hulu through your Disney app. It all feels silly, but I'm glad that we are getting more consistent and more consistent quality, I would say, from the films that Hulu is at least doing. So today we're talking about the greatest hits, and the greatest hits is it's a very interesting one. It is a lot about music, a little bit about love, and a whole lot more about grief maybe than I had kind of expected it to be. The whole premise, your main character, Harriet, played by Lucy Boynton, 2 years previously, she was in a car crash with her boyfriend, Max, played by David Cornsweet. She survives the crash. He does not. And life for her kind of stops there. She is unable to move forward in her own life. She really can only think about him. She worked in the music industry, and so, she was working on records. So she has a really close tie to music. And because of this, when she hears certain songs, she quite literally is almost transported back in time to when she first heard that song with Max. And so, because of this, she's really become guarded and protective. She wears almost soundproof headphones everywhere she goes, trying to limit the exposure she has to certain songs out in public because she never knows when some song might play, a memory might start, and she passes out in public and she goes someplace else for the duration of that song. So already I thought, what an interesting premise, because I mean, as someone who loves music and can't imagine a life without it, I know the power of music. I know how influential it can be, how mood altering it can be, but how every time you listen to a song, especially if it's one that holds some memories to you, it does feel like you go back in time. It feels like you're reliving that moment, or at least what you remember of it. So I was already on board with that premise. The film was written and directed by a gentleman by the name of Ned Benson. My only real association with him, I guess, he did the story for the Black Widow movie, but he wrote, directed, and did a really interesting thing with his film called The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, starring James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain, who are like two of my favorites. And what those films kind of did, there was them, him, and her. Three different versions of the same film, one of which is told from like their couple perspective. You watch this couple trying to reignite their flame and save the relationship they have. In the him version, it focuses mostly on McAvoy's character. You see how this breakup, or how them trying to work through this, is affecting him. And the same with the version for her. It is almost entirely focused from the female perspective, looking at how she views their relationship. And so it was a really interesting way to kind of go about doing a love story, a love drama, because obviously, we only really get what's on the surface for the both of them, but being able to fill in some of those backgrounds maybe before watching the ultimate version with them, it was really interesting. It was a really interesting way to look at love. He clearly has a lot of ideas about human beings and how we process things, heartbreak, loss, how some of the things, like these things, can kind of take us over, or how quickly we can kind of lose ourselves after a certain event. And so a lot of that kind of follows here with the greatest hits. And there's sort of a subplot where Harriet is going to counseling. She's going to grief counseling, never really speaks, but that's where she meets a guy named David, played brilliantly by Justin H. Min. David is totally shy. He is just, he will stare right at her, but is just unable to speak words. But that's okay, because Harriet's character is, I'd say, a little out of practice herself. And while Harriet's kind of searching for a song that could potentially take her back, change the boyfriend from ever getting in the car, whatever it was, she's also met with this guy in her present who is kind of piquing an interest and maybe instilling a little bit more of a will to take a chance on her future. So I won't say much more than that. I went into this film honestly with a lot of curiosity around David Cornsweet's character. I know he wasn't going to be the focus, but he'll be playing Superman next summer for the new movie James Gunn's doing in the new DC world. So I was anxious to kind of get a peek at him leading up into that. And unfortunately, he doesn't have a huge role. Um, Obviously, a lot of it's told in flashbacks, but even then, I feel like if any of the characters, maybe they did him the biggest disservice in the sense that the character isn't the best written. Granted, we're going back to memories. Human beings completely, we remember things differently. How we choose to remember something might not be what actually happened. And so in these flashbacks, you don't really get much from his character by the way of their connection, their love, moments that they share. And maybe that's part of the point of it too, because Harriet is just so caught up in what happened to her and what happened to him that maybe she feels like she could never love again, but was it the greatest relationship for her? It explores a lot of really interesting themes and some tough questions to ask, especially in a position like hers. And again, the way they use the music and kind of, you put your record on, she puts her headphones on or she blasts the music, transports her back to the memory. Really loved kind of how they did that and the sequencing with that. Love the focus on, actual records and vinyl and the importance of record shops and whatnot. But it was just really interesting because even though she knows that she's not totally crazy and that she really does go back in time when she hears these songs, her friends are obviously very concerned about her, both for her mental state and just for finding her way back to herself, finding a way back to the music that she loves to make. It was just really, it was really great. I really enjoyed a lot more, I would say, of the emotional aspects of this film, just in those conversations about loss, how it can affect you. Because Justin H. Min's character David is also suffering from a different kind of loss, but something that really does connect them. And it's a classic case of the no one will understand me, but here's someone who is taking the time, accepting me for my flaws, and wants to make an effort to try to understand and to help me. So I thought the messaging in the film was quite beautiful. Again, little left to be desired, maybe on the front of exploring the Harriet relationship with her ex, but for the most part, really enjoyed this film. Great music all throughout that's kind of weaved in pretty well. The performances were great, especially I would say from Justin H. Min. There was something about him and the way he spoke with Boynton's character, the way that they interacted. It stood out to me in a really positive way, and just a relationship or building to something that is built on trust and just built on acceptance and an understanding that things change people and certain events stay with you, and we can't always change how we feel, but what we can hope for is to have someone in our corner, someone there when we're able to kind of deal with it and discuss it. So I really hope to see Ned Benson do more. Definitely was a fan of his last work and was a fan of this for sure. I think he has a lot of really interesting ideas as far as him discussing relationships, being honest and upfront about the ups and downs, and having some of those hard conversations as well. So I hope he continues to do stuff from here. Again, for another Hulu release, super solid. Really looking forward to what comes next from that whole trio of actors. There's a lot of talent on the screen there, and next time I'm just hoping they maybe go a little bit bigger. Thanks again for tuning in, you guys. Seattle International Film Festival, the 50th festival, is coming up here in just a few short weeks, so expect a lot of coverage coming out of that. We got some blockbusters coming up as well. It is going to be a very good next couple months, so please stay tuned to NT Movie Reviews on all social media networks, podcast platforms, and even on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.